All right. Explain the events that led to the French Revolution. Also detail the three estates of France before the French Revolution. And three estates. We talked about these three estates yesterday. Each estate gets how many votes? Valley. One. Yes, good job. One. Good. So you can imagine you get 2/3, right? You get two estates that come together. You're gonna outvote the other every single time. And that's what happens. So I'll give you guys some time here. Right? Think about the wars that we talked about yesterday at the start of this topic. Think about the estates, like I mentioned, and where this is gonna go. All right, so there you go. I'll give you guys some time. The project, how's the project come along? I have that due for what, Thursday, the 19th? So next Thursday, I have that due. So everybody, hopefully, you look at the discussion post before you start researching, right? Comment who you're going to research and then who you're working with. I said groups of 3 to 4. If you want to work by yourself, that's fine too. But I like to get these presentations done that Thursday, which is our last day in here. Right? Again, test. I know we're moving pretty quick here, but the test I'd like to do it on Wednesday of next week. So that gives you some time and understanding of what's happening. Right? I'll put out a bookend Quizlet at the end of the week. I know we're not going to get through all the material just yet, but I'll put it out on Friday. So then you guys have some time over the weekend to maybe look over it. And if there are some terms that, we didn't talk about just yet, we'll get to it. I don't know if we'll have a review. We'll see, right? If we do have some time on Tuesday of next week, I'll have a look at review with you guys. So we're ready to go. All right. Audrina, you had your hand up.
I was trying.
Oh,
No.
that definitely what it was look like. Okay, what?
We have a group of 2.
Group of 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. That is fine. Just make sure you don't research anybody that's already chosen, okay? Look at the discussion posts, is what I'm getting at. Yeah.
At least it did because.
So you got a buzz.
No.
No? Don't you think you'd look good with that? Whoa, Brody, you hear that?
Actually, my life, but. Like one person told her.
What?
Raise camera. Oh, that's all right. Oh. No.
You guys hand your papers in? Good. Uh-oh.
Ew.
All right, here we go. So 2 wars that we talked about yesterday. Okay, what was the first one we mentioned about? What's the first war that we talked about that sets the stage not only for the French Revolution, but the American Revolution? Did I just give one away? Kind of I did. Jason, go ahead. Yeah, the 7 Years' War, known as the French and Indian War. I also said about it being the first what? What else was it? Audrina. Yes, the first global war. So yeah, this conflict was between who? What 2 countries? Naomi. France and England. Good job. They hate each other, right? And we'll mention about their alliance down the line when we get closer to World War I. But right up to this point, they still hate each other, duking it out. Costly wars. All right, I say it's the first global war because they're fighting in Europe, obviously, but they're also fighting in mainly North America. So the British, England has the 13 colonies. France has a lot of territory there in the Ohio River Valley, moving out to the Mississippi River, and even expanding out into the Great Plains region, making a lot of money off of the fur trade with the Native Americans. All right, who got their claim to fame in this war? He was a general for the British, early, like 20 years old. He surrendered a lot. Audrina. Yes, George Washington, good job. All right, so again, these two sides here utilize the Native Americans to help gain an advantage in this war. Who won this war? Who won this war? I mean, technically, I guess, Jason.
British.
Yeah, the British, right? So with that, both sides, not just France, even though they kind of lost, right? Not just France, but Britain also has to do what in order to pay off the debts for this conflict? Again, they fought in Asia too, right? Jason?
Raised taxes.
Yeah, they had to raise taxes. So no one likes that at all. And as that war's coming to an end, right, the taxes in both countries and their colonies, well, this is only going to fuel the flames for what? What revolution?
French Revolution.
Well, we'll get to that, but the American Revolution, good job. All right, I know it sounds crazy. Here you got a divine right monarch of Louis what Louis did we talk about yesterday briefly? We'll mention more about him here. Chloe,
14.
no, he's gone now. It's his grandson. Add two to that.
16.
Yes, Louis XVI, okay, so he's a divine right monarch. And he decides to support America in this weird experiment where they're gonna try to create a republic. Why? Why did he support the colonies here, the British colonies, America fighting Britain? Why did he want to do this? Again, this kind of leads to his demise eventually, as the French people see, right, what kind of government this will be for the people. Jason?
Because just wanted to get back at England.
Yeah, right. So the rivalry between Englands, right? They wanted to be a thorn in the side, right? Would we have won without France's help? Probably not, right? Probably not. So that's something to think about here. And again, Louis XVI, this divine right monarch, right? He's supporting America, the colonies here. And well, eventually, these ideas, this type of government is what the French people will want. All right, so there's the stage here. You got these two events. That leads to a lot of what that they got to pay off? Oh, no. A lot of what? Financial problems, a lot of debt. Okay, that's the big thing here to remember. All right, what else was going on here? The Enlightenment, right? So with the Enlightenment happening, right, you got to imagine a lot of these ideas are getting out thanks to that printing press. And this is pushing people again to really open their eyes. Okay, this rhetoric, this information does mean power. All right, so here are your terms for today. Oh boy. All right, so I do have a lot. Sorry, but like I mentioned, we're gonna keep it moving. Keep it moving. All right, with these terms here, guys, I'm gonna go through them through the lesson. All right, but we got the Estates General, or how they say it in France, the Estates General. Cool. All right, the National Assembly, right? We'll mention about this National Assembly and how they break away. One estate decides, you know what, we're done with this old method. We get outvoted every single time. We're going to create our own assembly, our own government, right? Before they do that, well, they have to come up with an oath, an agreement. And I know it sounds weird. They call it the tennis court oath. Because the National Assembly, which you guys can probably guess, what estate says we're done with this mess? What estate says we're done and finally breaks away? What do you think? Chase, what estate?
Third.
Yeah, the third, good job. So with the third estate, they decide to actually meet on, listen to this, Louis the 16th's private tennis court. What? Yeah, well, because the Estates General building, right, was chained up, it was locked up. So they couldn't get in. So they had to meet somewhere, and they met here on the tennis court of Versailles. Gee. It's Louise with cheese. Okay, so the tennis court oath, they decide that we need to make sure we have a constitution before we leave, right? So they meet on Louis the 16th, which was Louis the 14th. Remember him, Chloe? You mentioned him, the son came, right? His private tennis court. All right, so once they get this constitution, then they can maybe have some sort of political action against France and say, hey, this is what direction we want to go in. This is what type of government we want. We got the numbers, right? We want change. You think Louis the 16th is going to allow that right away? What do you think? What do you think, Jason? No, he doesn't. So this prompts something else, right? This prompts an event known as the storming of the Bastille. Ooh. All right, so the storming of the Bastille. Think about this as, well, the people riding up against this symbol of the old monarchy, which was a prison. All right, so the Bastille is a prison, but also an armory within Paris. Okay, you guys know what an armory is? What is an armory, Jason? Yeah, where all the weapons are located. Right, so it's not like they had a Second Amendment there in France. So the people, if they really want change, well, they need to be armed, right? So they go to the armory, try to tear this thing down. And 98 protesters, people from the third state get killed. And only one, let's say, guard, right? So one guard gets killed in the process of this happening. And weird thing, but this is kind of like an old castle. So there's only like a few prisoners in there. That was it. They released the prisoners as this was happening. And well, they take the governor, Paris, they take him, and they lop off his head. They put it on a pipe and they say, hey, this has changed. And this right here, guys, storming of the Bastille, if you want to write beside it, Bastille Day, which is known as France's Independence Day, right? That'd be great. This is the changing of the tide. This is the changing of a new order, a new government in France. Okay, so from this, we'll see a constitutional monarchy. Wait a minute, what country had a constitutional monarchy? Another influence of this French Revolution, right? And they didn't have to look too far. They looked at a rival. Who was France's big rival? Naomi? England, yes. So yeah, maybe sometimes your enemies have a pretty good form of government, right? So they look at their enemy, England, and say, this is what government we want, right? This seems representative, right? This seems better than what we had before. So they tear down this old system of monarchy. All right, still wasn't enough though, right? People were still what? Starving on the streets. They didn't have money to go around. So think about it. You have women outraged to a point where they're going to march on, let's say, the Palace of Versailles. That's exactly what happens. 6,000 women march from Paris to Versailles, and they demand food. They demand better living conditions. Okay. And in this process, no one really knows how many people died, but you got to imagine if women are coming up to the door. You can only imagine that. I deal with one angry woman at home. 6,000 of them? Can you imagine? Oh, man. So with that being said, the Women's March on Versailles was just another showing that, well, people were fed up. They want change. And this is where Louis XVI, Marie Antoinette, are gathered at, right? They still hold somewhat power in this constitutional monarchy. They give to the people. They give them all the food that was there at the Palace of Versailles. So things are changing in a better direction. All right, so with that being said, then right after we got this movement of the storming of the Bastille, Women's March on Versailles, we get the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizens. Wait a minute, Declaration of Independence? Pretty much, right? So this is France's version of the Declaration of Independence. So you guys want to write that down right next to the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizens? That'd be good. So this is France's version of the Declaration of Independence. And it almost exactly what the Declaration of Independence states. So in other words, well, we're an inspiration to them, right? They saw our government say, you know what, this is a pretty good idea, right? Obviously, they're going to use a lot of the Enlightenment philosophers' ideas, like who said 3 branches of government, separation of powers? Who said this? What Enlightenment philosopher? Said to break it down into syllables, 3 branches, 3 syllables. What was this guy's name? Jason? Social contract. Naomi. Montesquieu, good job. John Locke, life, liberty, and property, right? So they look at the Enlightenment philosophers along with, again, our Declaration of Independence. Say that seems pretty good to us. All right, this will directly lead into their Constitution of 1791. This is not where it ends, though. France will go through a lot of different constitutions. They'll go through a lot of different changes with their government, right? And it's not going to look pretty. I will mention about a guy that comes around, not too tall, actually average height. People try to make that myth. Some guy comes around and changes things forever. They kind of go back to authoritarianism in a way, but it's better somehow, somewhat. You guys can maybe understand it later. What's this guy's name? Brody, you're short. I'm short too. Who do you think this guy is? This famed general, the greatest general of all time. Starts with an N in France. He takes him. Yes, it's all good. All right. You guys need a little bit more time here with the terms. All right, how about another minute or so? All right. Again, I like to give a rundown of the terms just so you have a somewhat of an understanding before we move on to the lesson. Sorry, Bruce, calling you. We're getting to the void now. And talk about reign of terror. Lopping heads off left and right. Over 40,000 people getting their heads lopped off during this 1 year period. Imagine that, Audrina. You done with your terms? Oh, all right, I guess we're ready, huh? Another minute, yeah, another minute. We'll move on. All right, so we finished off talking about the three estates here of France before the revolution. All right, and we talked about the events that led to the revolution. Again, a lot of the issues here come from debt, right? Not just from wars, but what else? What did Louis XIV build? What palace? What palace was this? Jenna. Yes, I'm glad you didn't say Versailles. Good. Versailles. All right, the Palace of Versailles. Remember, at the time of the creation of the Palace of Versailles, it took about half of France's finances, right? The rest went to war. So did the people get anything? No, right? So up to this point here, obviously they're paying off the Palace of Versailles, but they're also, right, spending a lot of money on these fancy parties. They'll mention about Madame Deficit here soon. We'll be on to that. Her fame, too, came from a lot of spending. She wasn't even from France either. And she liked these weird hats. So she was famed for wearing these strange, just really obscure hats. Okay, we'll talk about that here soon. So you gotta imagine people are pissed off. They're like, oh, why actually can afford all these hats while we can't afford bread? All right, so anyway, with the three estates, the first estate makes up the who? Who's in the first estate again? Who is it? Jason? The clergy. Yep, good job. So this is your religious hierarchy, the Catholic Church, right? These church officials. All right, they're literate, they're educated, yeah, but now all of a sudden, everybody seems to be educated, but the printing press, things are changing. People are becoming more knowledgeable. Information is what? Calvin, get off the mat. Come on. Information is what? Austin? Power. Good job. Almost knocked the sleeves off of this. Jeez. Okay. Anyway, second estate. Who's in the second estate? Someone other than Jason. Oh, Blake. Yeah, the nobles. Good job, the nobility. So these are your wealthy individuals. Okay, these are the people here that own businesses when it comes to private ventures to the new world. These joint stock companies, right? They own all the land too. So if you're a peasant, if you're a farmer, any type of worker in Paris and many places in France, you rented from the nobility. All right, the first and second estate, did they pay taxes? Did they pay taxes, Olivia? 50-50 shot here. Did they pay taxes? No, good job. I was gonna trick you and do that. Okay, but anyway, no, they did not. Right? Why didn't they pay taxes? The king wanted to make sure that they're on his side, right? Keep them on a short leash, just like Louis XIV. But rather than invite them over for constant parties, which he did, right? He thought, well, easy way to do it too is that you guys don't have to pay taxes. Do they serve in the military? No, right? They don't. The third estate, though, which we talked about, makes up 97% of the population, 98% of the population. They serve in war. They pay taxes, right? They can't afford food. It sucks. All right, so here's a pretty good political cartoon emphasizing the three estates. So here you got, right, the clergy, the first estate. You got these religious officials, okay? And then you got the nobility standing on top of this massive rock as this farmer, this peasant here of, who do you think's underneath the rock? What estate? what estate here? Audrina, what estate is getting crushed by the rock and the two other estates? Yeah, the third one, good job. So we're good here. We're picking up what I'm putting down. This is awesome. All right, good, moving on. So other issues, like I mentioned, we just talked about this, okay? We already mentioned about this, so I can keep it moving. All right, the biggest issues for France is you got it debt. Yeah, the Enlightenment period too, which we'll talk about here next. But debt is one of the big issues moving forward. Again, England, well, they just lost the colonies, didn't they, Brody? They lost that revolution here. They lost that American Revolution. So they lost their colonies because of this debt, right? People in the colonies said, we're done, no taxation without representation. Here in France, we see something similar, right? They just can't be fighting these constant wars over time, where the people, right, 98% of the population aren't seeing any benefit. Again, they're starving and have no ability to put food on the table. So government gave $6 million to the American colonists for the Revolutionary War. Right, 6 million back then is about over, let's say, $1 billion in today's money. Right, so you can imagine just any chunk of change like that, that's going to really put a burden down on the taxpayers. Right, man, it seems a lot like what's going on here with these constant wars that we're funding, huh? Anyway, so you can see why people are getting a little upset by it. Anyway, with the American Revolution, again, France just wanted to be a thorn in the side, right? As of sending military equipment, armaments over to help America win. Even though Louis XVI is this divine right leader, do you think he wants the people to have a republic? No, right? This goes against his order. This goes against his power. So it seems weird, but hey, you can stick it to Great Britain. Any chance you get, you go and do that. All right. Also, like I mentioned, when it comes to their fancy parties, right? All right, these colonies too that they have established all around the world. Right, so yeah, they still have some possessions in North America, even after the French and Indian War, but they also have possessions in Africa and in parts of Asia, right? That costs money to hold it, to make sure that it doesn't get overrun or you see revolutions there. So yeah, it's costing France a lot of cash. I also, like I mentioned, with these parties, the king, the queen, well, they live the great life. They have these awesome parties. They spend a lot of money too on their wardrobe, on their dress, on their appearance, on these food, on these parties that the people obviously were not invited to from the third estate. First and second, oh yeah, no problem. But well, third, not so much. So what does that cost too? Well, not only do they got to pay taxes here in the third estate, but inflation, right? Let's face it, the worth of that dollar, as you keep spending it, as you keep printing it, well, it's going to go down. It's going to be pretty much worthless. So there you are trying to go to the markets to put food on the table, and the money is just outrageous. It's hard for you to obviously put any type of food on the table. All right, what hall is this? What room is this in the Palace of Versailles? Luna? Yes, the Hall of Mirrors. Good. Again, we'll mention about this when we get to World War One. Don't forget it. Pretty cool. All right, moving on here. Other inspirations, other events that lead to the French Revolution. The philosophers. We talked about these guys. Yeah? Well, looking at the test, maybe you guys need to look over it again. All right, so with these Enlightenment philosophers, they all bring some sort of opportunity, some sort of ideas here, enlightenment to France as they want to try to change their government, get away from this old system of monarchy. Olivia.
Go back like a little bit. Thank you.
Good?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, now one frozen again. So here we got John Locke, right? We mentioned about these enlightenment philosophers like Rousseau, social contract. Locke, especially with his life, liberty, and property, right? People should have these freedoms. They should have these rights. These are God-given rights. The monarch, even though he says he's the divine right leader, well, that's not going with the third estate anymore. That's not going with the people anymore. People wake up to this abuse, this authoritarianism, and say, we're done with it. Again, they just supported too a war in America where they can have a government that is representative of the people. So you got to imagine the French people are like, well, look at what they have over there. We supported it. Why can't we have something like that? Also in England, right? They're arch rival. They have a constitutional monarchy. Who makes most of the decisions for England? Even still this day. The king's just there, right? The monarch's just there. Who makes the decisions for England? Go ahead. Parliament, right? So it's like like our Congress, right? So when it comes down to it, these ideas are really bouncing around Europe. And that's why that chapter, last chapter was so, so important. Right? That's why I gave you an organizer. Organize these philosophers. Okay, anyway, so there's many more philosophers here that we can mention, like Vicarian, right? We mentioned a little bit about John Locke, like I just said, Rousseau, Voltaire, yeah, okay, you can see where I'm going. All right, moving on here. Also, other factors. Well, you got weak leaders. Louis XVI, man, oh man, right? At this point, at this time, he's trying to lead the country just like his granddad, Louis XIV. But like I mentioned, with all these factors at play, with the debt, right? With the Enlightenment viewpoints, with the printing press, these ideas are spreading around all throughout Europe, right? With all these changes that are happening, and let's face it, these monarchs just living up the high life while the people are suffering, while the people are starving to death. Well, eventually push is going to come and shove, and we're going to see a change. We're going to see a revolution. All right, one thing here with Louis XVI, like I said, he tried to live like Louis XIV. He believed he was this divine right leader. And well, he's kind of even getting bossed around by the first estate and the second estate. They just pretty much told him what he was going to do. So it just kind of showed his temperament. It showed his personality. It showed his mentality at the time. It's like, he's a divine right leader. Why are you listening to the clergy? Why are you listening to the second estate? You shouldn't. You're above that. You think Louis XIV would have listened to the first estate or the second? Heck no, right? But for Louis XVI, he starts to see this unfolding around him. He starts to crumble. All right, and then like I said, Marie Antoinette. So Marie Antoinette, what was her famous last words? Anybody? Anybody? Said it yesterday. Jason? Let the meat cake, yeah. So she wasn't even from France. She was from Austria, right? Austria was a rival to France. And like I said, back in the day here, they thought that this would bridge an alliance between the two countries if you married just into the other family. So even though they thought this was going to work out, we'll see a war with France and Austria. But with Marie Antoinette, she was famed for her spending. Like I said, she had these weird hats. I don't know why. You guys get a chance, maybe look into that a little bit more. But she'd wear these fancy hats and these fancy dress and attire and throw this crazy, crazy parties for the nobility, for the higher end, wealthier class of France. They called her, if you want to put this by her name, Madame Deficit. Madame Deficit. That was her nickname. So you can imagine, the people were fed up. They were sick of it. Eating cake all the time. Man, luxury. So, as you can see too, she was very young, 19, 18 years old, to make bad decisions. All right, like I said, the social classes, we're good here. We're good here. Here's just another political cartoon emphasizing these social classes. So you got the first and second estate, along with Louis, jumping on the backs of the third estate. So you can see the third estate pretty much as a slave, as an indentured servant to France, to the crown, right? To the nobility, to the higher wealthy classes. Again, sooner or later, people are going to, obviously want to change. All right, so here we go. We got social injustice. You got it. War expenditures, debt, financial problems. Yep. And then a royal lifestyle. That's going to all move for changes here in France. All right, so here's the meeting. Like I mentioned, when it comes to Louis XVI, again, he's faced with all these issues, all these problems, all this debt, right? The Enlightenment ideas bouncing around. The American Revolution kicking off and seeing that the French people, and even the constitutional monarchy in England, right, the French people want a taste of this government that's for the people. So as that happens, he calls for the Estates General. All right. So the Estates General is a meeting between the three estates. Or again, how many estates? Well, how many votes does each estate get? Go ahead, Jason. One. Yeah. So each estate gets one vote. Right. So you can imagine. Well, who comes together? Who links together to outvote the other estate? You know what I mean?
Nobility.
Yeah. Right. So in this meeting here, because Louis, let's say, is schnoozing up here the first and second estate, they don't have to pay taxes. So they see this as an opportunity to pass whatever the heck they want. And as you can see, this is the first estate general that was called in 175 years. So think about it. You think Louis XIV ever called an estates general like this? You think he ever called the three estates together? No, right? He's above that. He's the Sun King. Come on. All right, but now Louis XVI, which you can kind of see his weak power, right? His weak leadership, he calls for it. And he says, oh, we'll just fix this, no problem. Right? We'll have the first and second estate vote together like normal, and we'll raise taxes again. All right, this time though, the third estate is not buying it. Just like I said, with all these other factors that I just mentioned, they say enough's enough. We're not agreeing with this. So what do? The third estate says, if you guys keep going down this path, it's rigged, it's clearly rigged. Right? We need to try to form our own government. Right? We need to try to form our own means to have a more representative government. So they form the National Assembly. All right, so the National Assembly is this new government for the third estate, for the people of the third estate. So these are your peasants, these are your farmers, these are your workers, right? These are the people that have been smashed with taxes forever. And they're finally done with it. So what do? They leave the Estates General. They say, okay, yep, see you later, we're gone. Right? So you can imagine the first and second estate, very small portion of the population. They're like, what? You can't leave. You can't leave. Well, who has the population? Who has the numbers? The third estate. So yeah, you can see it just crumbling underneath Louis XVI, underneath the first and second estate. And this Estates General, man, it did fold like a house of cards. So main thing to remember, the third estate breaks away and they create their own government known as the National Assembly. All right, so real quick, guys, social protest, political action, revolution. These are the actions and steps to what we see as the French Revolution. So yeah, you see people protesting on the streets. They say, hey, we want change, right? At first it might be peaceful, right? You might see some people putting, maybe some marches together. They're maybe marching down, let's say in this case, Paris. They're trying to voice their opinion, voice their interest, voice their want for change in the government. And then, well, you might get to see political action. So in political action, what do you got to do? You got to write some sort of constitution. You got to write some sort of agreement amongst the people, right? So this is where the National Assembly is born. And with that being said, they come up with their constitution. Do you think Louis XVI is going to agree to this constitution that they come up with? No, right? He said, hey, that's cute and all, but I'm still the king. I'm still the king. And this is where it's going to get bloody, right? He's not going to agree to this change, right? He's not going to agree to this National Assembly. And that's where you're going to see sparks fly. That's where you're going to actually see violence on the streets here with revolutionary actions. So just if you want to write down, these are terms that you guys already know. Social protest, political action, and then, yeah, if nothing changes, revolution is going to happen. Bloodshed is going to happen. Violence is going to happen. All right, so what happens here? The National Assembly, as they break away from the Estates General, they say, hey, we need to come up with a constitution. If we don't have a constitution, if we don't have any type of written set of laws and ideas of what our government looks like, then, well, why would Louis XVI sign off on it? So we got to look formal, right? We got to have something together to try to make this clear separation, show this clear breakaway from this old system of government, right? This government that's been around for about 1,200 years at this point. It stinks. All right, so where do they go? They try to go to this Estates General meeting, right? Where the assembly usually takes place at Versailles. But as they show up to the door, well, it's locked, right? It's locked up. So they go, well, what are we going to do? Right? Louis XVI thought the people were stupid. Let's face it. He thought that they would just go home then. Are they just going to go home? No, right? They actually go right down, just a little bit past the Palace of Versailles. And they go to the tennis court of Louis XVI, was Louis XIV. So they go to his tennis court, his own private tennis court, right? And they get together and they say, hey, we're not leaving here until we get a constitution written. So that's what the tennis court oath is. They say, hey, we need to make an oath. We need to make an agreement, right? We need to have somewhat of a contract amongst us all that we're not leaving here until we get a constitution. So you can imagine, right? Do you think the third estate cares that Louis XVI might send an army there and try to kill them all? What do you think? No, they don't care. They're like, hey, we already been living in hell, right? We want change now. The only way to do that is if we have this oath, this agreement, this constitution. So even though there are threats that Louis XVI was going to send the military, well, it never really happened. Because Louis XVI even realized that if he fires upon the people, if he breaks apart this meeting, well, there's a revolution happening that second. So he needed to try to appease them a bit. They show maybe a weak leader, maybe. Why did he just squash it right then and there? Well, who knows, right? Maybe he should. Anyway, what happened? So, like I said, when it comes down to it, the tennis court oath is this agreement with the National Assembly, the third estate, that they need to come up with a constitution. Again, like I said, Louis XVI wanted to put it down, but he chickened out. Like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't fire upon the people. We can't do that, which is good, which is a good thing. All right, so you got to imagine. His constitution. Do you think Louis XVI is going to agree to it? No, he's not. Right? Even though he lets them assemble, even though he lets them get together, even though he allows this constitution to be written, he's still like, I don't really want this because I'm the divine right leader. Why would I ever agree to that? Well, what happens next? Well, the story of the Bastille. Right? So revolution kicks off. right? Even though he didn't kill the people in the tennis court, even though he didn't just try to disband it, right? He didn't agree to the Constitution. So that heightens people to seek out violence. So where do they go? They storm the Bastille. The Bastille, again, is this armory, this prison in Paris, right? And this was a sign, a symbol of the old monarchy, the old ways, right? So in other words, you can see it. It looks like an old castle, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. So the people in France, you gotta imagine the third state here, they march onto the Bastille and they want to take the armory, right? If the population is armed, if they have weapons, well, then they're gonna be a force to reckon with. Then Louis XVI has to agree to their terms. So yeah, is there a reason why we have the Second Amendment? Oh yeah, right? Oh yeah, they don't obviously have that, but anyway, the people march on the armory, they get their weapons, and 98 protesters were killed. Again, this is the fortifications, you gotta imagine, obviously they have weapons, right? And they're killing a lot of the protesters, but well, the protesters eventually take over the Bastille. As they take over the Bastille, the prisoners were set free, the people get the weapons, and this is the changing of the tide. Now Louis XVI has to agree on their terms. So we'll mention this new government that comes about, it is gonna be a constitutional monarchy, just like we see in England. But it's still not gonna be perfect. We'll mention about that sooner. Only one prison guard died in the process, only one. And like I said, make sure you guys know it, it's known as Bastille Day, July 14th. Right? Pretty close to July 4th, right? Yeah, so it's their Independence Day. Right, there it is. See you guys later. Have a good one. Take care.
Students report to the athletic office, Jeffrey Teeter and Carmen Smells. Cameron